Well, Meredith McIver is apparently the person that the Trump campaign has chosen to throw under the bus, but maybe this story is just straight up. You'll recall yesterday or even day before yesterday, when the story really it was yesterday, the story of Melania's Trump's plagiarism, her speech containing plagiarized material from Michelle Obama. Of all people, I mean, you know, the person that the wife of the person that Donald Trump has committed the last 7 years of his life to trying to otherize and destroy and question, his legitimacy and his right to be, a black man in the White House and all that kind of stuff. That it's particularly ironic that this was cribbed from Michelle Obama, but. In any case, apparently what happened was, first they hired a couple of professional Republican speechwriters, and they wrote a speech, and Melania looked at it and said, I don't like this. And so, or Donald looked at it and said, somebody looked at it and said, we don't like this. And so they reached out to Meredith McIver, who has worked on some of Mr. Trump's books, quoting Maggie Haberman in today's New York Times, to work with Melania in writing a speech. And so Maggie had a phone conversation with Melania in which, well, actually, I'll just read this to you. This is verbatim from Meredith McIver's letter of apology, which you can find on Twitter and all that, pretty much every place else. She wrote, and what you're going to hear here is basically that the source of the plagiarisms was Melania herself. And you recall a day or two ago when this first came out, I said the Trump campaign has not yet thrown somebody under the bus. They haven't fired somebody. They haven't immediately cut somebody's head off. They haven't gone ballistic on this, which means that either this was an intentional sabotage by one of the Trump kids, and I had my theory about who it might be, who was the most Democratic and the least Republican among them, but pretty unlikely. But that was the conspiracy theory that basically Glenn Beck, I think, was putting out, and a few others. Either this was an intentional sabotage of Melania, or Melania herself suggested these plagiarized lines. Perhaps not being, she's only been a U.S. citizen for 8 years. She's an immigrant. English is not her first language. She's never studied law. She went to college for 1 year, and I think that was for fashion and design. So to expect her to be familiar and comfortable with copyright law is kind of silly, which is why there should have been somebody who had that knowledge vetting this speech. This is where Paul Manafort really, really blew it, in my opinion. And the Republicans should be just going after him, just because he was the final sign off on this. But anyhow, this is what Meredith McIver said. She said, in working with Melania on a recent First Lady speech, we discussed many people who inspired her and messages she wanted to share with the American people. A person she has always liked is Michelle Obama. Now, that's an interesting thing to say. Anyhow, she says, over the phone, Mrs. Trump read me some passages from Mrs. Obama's speech as examples, presumably examples of of sentiments that Melania thought were really nice. I wrote them down and later included some of the phrasing in the draft that ultimately became the final speech. I did not check Mrs. Obama's speeches. Now that tells me that Melania didn't explicitly tell her that these phrases were from Michelle Obama. In other words, the plagiarism was Melania's idea, probably not even realizing what plagiarism is. Anyhow, so Ms. McIver says, I did not check Mrs. Obama's speeches. This was my mistake, and I feel terrible for the chaos I have caused Melania and the Trumps, as well as to Mrs. Obama. No harm was meant. He further said that she'd offered her resignation to Mr. Trump and the Trump family, but they rejected it. Mr. Trump told me that people make innocent mistakes and we learn and grow from these experiences. All right. See, I think he's not firing her because it was his wife's idea. So anyhow, it looks like this is how Melania Gate is going to, sputter into obscurity, and fine with me if it sputters into obscurity. I thought, and frankly, and in fact, Donald Trump has this right. I mean, he tweeted, thanks to all the media press, there's no such thing. If you subscribe to the notion that there's no such thing as bad press, Melania's speech got more press than any spousal speech ever did, which is true. In other words, he controlled the news cycle for 3 days in what should be viewed as negative, but it's not really negative. I think, it's like, I don't, so Melania plagiarized some lines from Michelle Obama and says she likes Michelle Obama. Is that going to cause me to not vote for Donald Trump if I'm the average Republican voter? I doubt it. I doubt it. This is that kind of gotcha stuff. I mean, it's interesting. It's kind of wonky, but once again, Trump plays the media for suckers. It's pretty impressive. I'm telling you, he is the danger is that he is our Berlusconi, our eccentric billionaire who acts out and misbehaves, and who is basically a rubber stamp to the other billionaires and what they want out of society. And Italy is now paying a very high price for the Berlusconi presidency or prime ministership. And if Trump becomes our president, we will pay a very high price for that.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.